Welcome to the For Sale by Owner Secrets Masterclass. My name is Tim Brooks. I'm an agent based in the Miami, Fort Lauderdale area, and I've got a team here and an expansion team in the Washington, D.C. area. I've closed approximately 800 transactions in my career, and I started out by calling FSBOs and expired listings at the absolute bottom of the market during the crash that started in 2008. I built my team and we had massive success by teaching our members what I had learned about prospecting for sale by owners and expired listings. And I'm excited to be teaching you the very best of what we learned over the years about outcompeting other agents so you can build your business and your legacy and have the same massive success. I'm going to break this masterclass up into a series of modules to help you digest the material in manageable bites. In Module 1, we're going to cover an overview of for sale by owners as a valuable lead source. We're going to go over what a FSBO seller wants, their thought process, why you should work with them, and the difference between for sale by owners and expired listings. We're going to go over the correct way to approach a FSBO seller where most agents get it wrong, and the general rhythm and timeline of taking a for sale by owner listing from first contact to signing the paperwork. In Module 2, we'll go over the unique and powerful script that accomplishes everything that you're going to learn in Module 1. We're going to break it down step by step so you not only know what to say and when to say it, but why to say it. In Module 3, we'll review my live FSBO calls so you can hear me deliver the script in a real-world setting. You're going to hear the tonality that I use, the timing of the questions in the real-world scenario with real-world responses. And finally, in Module 4, we'll go over the tools and resources you'll need, how to use them, and where you can find them. And with that, I'm very excited to get started. Also, those of you in the South Florida or Washington, D.C. markets that would like to explore an opportunity to join our team, you should reach out or click in the link in the description. If you want to explore an expansion partnership in another part of the country, you should also reach out. That being said, let's jump right in. For Sale by Owner Secrets, Module 1. What is a FSBO? Let's just start out with that real quick too, because I think a lot of people do get confused when they hear for sale by owner or FSBO and expired and kind of think they're the same thing, but they are not the same thing. I'll cover that in a little bit more detail later in this module. But for now, for sale by owner simply is a seller selling without an agent. That's it. They're just selling on their own without an agent. Now, why would a seller do that? It's more simple than you think, right? It's not necessarily that they have anything against agents or anything else. They simply want to net the most money for their sale. And when you think about it like that, oh, okay, they simply want to net the most amount of money, and you can kind of get that out of your mind. And also it'll help you get that out of their mind about removing the agent from the process. It makes it a lot simpler what your task is and what you have to accomplish with a for sale by owner. Now think about that real quick. A for sale by owner seller wants to net the most amount of money. So what do they want besides just netting the most amount of money? They want a buyer. They don't want an agent, they want a buyer. And 9 times out of 10, most agents are calling them, telling them how great they are and everything else. Meanwhile, what they really want is a buyer, not an agent. What they think they're doing is saving 6% in the commission, right? And that's a fairly substantial amount for most people. That is their initial thought process, is 6%. And you'll actually see that with a lot of these for sale by owner companies that will list them in the MLS or something like that. They advertise it as saving 6% and everything. But you'll see when we break it down a little bit later, and in the script you're going to learn in Module 2, we actually can compress the amount they're actually going to save into a very small amount, making it make more financial sense to list with an agent. And then the decision is, do they want to list with you or somebody else? Eventually, they are going to list with somebody 9 times out of 10. Okay, so what does a seller want? When most agents are calling for sale by owner sellers, they're pitching themselves and their company and how great they are. when instead we should be giving them what they want. What do they want? They want a buyer. They don't want an agent, right? So we need to kind of move into the realm of how to help them accomplish that. And it's not even a buyer they want, it's netting the most amount of money. So we always have to reframe the conversation into what they really want and then how we best deliver it. What is the for sale by owner thought process? Because there is a thought process with the for sale by owner. Now they're thinking initially they're going to save on commissions like we talked about. They want to net more money. They also may tend to think that agents don't really do anything. And a lot of times as agents, if they've had one before or if they would watch a lot of HGTV, these sellers, they may think, oh, I can do that. The agent doesn't really do anything anyway. They use the 3P method. They put a sign in the front yard, they put it in the MLS, and they pray that somebody else sells it, right? And we know probably 80% of the agents out there, that is what they do. So these for sale by owners aren't necessarily wrong in that sense if they've been dealing with, say, kind of an average agent that doesn't do a whole lot or hasn't really honed their listing game and figured out how to really articulate and provide a high amount of value. Because that's really the key here. Are sellers only have a problem signing paperwork in the absence of value. If you provide plenty of value, it makes it very easy for them to make a decision to work with you. Also, did you know for sale by owner seller can get MLS access for roughly $500 to $1,000? Most agents may not necessarily be aware of that. There are certain FSBO brokers out there that all they do is simply sign a very basic listing agreement with these FSBOs, stick them in the MLS with no other services other than that for roughly between $500 and $1,000. And for a lot of agents, that's like, oh, we have MLS access, so we're kind of protected in that way. No, just go do a Google search and you'll find that these FSBO sellers have plenty of options for MLS access. Now, not all MLS access is the same, of course, with syndications and other things too. Just something to keep in mind, but they do have access to it. So you're going to have to go a little bit more beyond that when working with and talking with these for sale by owners, but that's a little bit later in the conversation. So why should you work with FSBO sellers? Especially if agents don't really understand them or think that they're maybe hostile towards the use of an agent. Well, for one, they're not hostile towards agents, and you'll find that out once you go through module 2 of the script. They actually are not hostile to agents, and they intend 9 times out of 10 to actually cooperate with buyer agents already. So they're not really hostile. The reason you should work with them is because they're such an easy, readily identifiable group of sellers that have already raised their hand saying, I intend to sell my house. I am ready right now. You don't have to wait for weeks for them to get the house ready or to persuade them to actually list their home or sell it. They're already ready to go. Your only task is to persuade them to work with you. The other thing is they're very predictable. They follow very closely a set of patterns, and there's constantly a replenishment of these leads day after day, depending on your market and what the lead flow is. It can be quite substantial. It can be anything from, if you're in a small market, to maybe 10 a month to hundreds a month in my markets. Both of my markets are just saturated with these. And so it's just such an easy source of leads that are readily available and always ready to go. For sale by owners reliably list with agents, and they do it in a very predictable time frame. Now, that being said, that's where people get confused with expireds versus for sale by owner. Expireds, you have to pretty much, if you can get them on the phone, you have to set an appointment in that call. The follow-up with expireds is maybe you'll get them back on the phone, maybe not, but they're just getting bombarded with calls from agents. And so if you don't take them down on that initial prospecting call when you make contact with them, your chances of actually listing with them, unless you have a very thorough follow-up game, are pretty slim. With the for sale by owner, it's actually a series of calls, and the follow-up is the critical part that allows them to list with you versus somebody else. Because most agents, their follow-up game isn't really that good. For sale by owner has a predictable pattern from week 1 through week 4 of when they actually will list with an agent. It's usually going to be the last agent that they speak with, that they had some rapport with, that they list, once the flip switches in their head that they're ready to list. So what's the difference between an expired listing and a FSBO? Well, expireds already had an agent and the agent failed to sell the property. 99% of the time, that was a pricing issue. And even though it was the seller who made the decision, they're still going to blame the agent. And in fact, most expireds are the agent's fault because they did not coach or guide or teach their sellers in a way that actually made sense to that seller to get them to price their property correct. But 99% of the time, it's a pricing issue. Now the sellers are pissed off. They're blaming the agent. The agent didn't provide the value that they had promised. You've seen these agents out there. They go and they buy the listing by quoting some price that's above market so they can outcompete the other agents, almost as if they're bidding on the property, even though they're not the ones buying. The market's really what dictates. But the sellers ultimately do blame them when it fails to sell, even though they never got it in their heads that, oh, the pricing was the issue. Anytime I ever take an expired listing, that's the main part of what you have to accomplish with that is reconfigure their perspective on the pricing of their property. So FSBOs, on the other hand, they don't have and they don't want an agent. The perception is that the agent doesn't provide value, like we said. The perceived value for a FSBO is actually in bringing a buyer. Even though that's not really what agents do for the most part as a listing agent, they see the perceived value, kind of like an old-fashioned view of what a listing agent used to be. Their perceived value is in you having a buyer. One of the great things with FSBOs, and it's something that I like to do, it's something that is in our system of listing FSBOs, and you'll learn it in Module 2 in the script, of teaching the FSBO how to actually sell the house on their own. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but I actually teach them how to sell it on their own. I provide a video for them that actually teaches them to sell it on their own. In Module 4, I'll show you where to get that video and which video I use. But it's kind of like, yes, I can teach you how to change your own transmission if I'm a mechanic, but once I teach you how to do it, or once I give you a video on all the details of how to do it, there's a good chance you're probably not going to want to do it. Even though you now know how to do it, you probably aren't going to want to. And that's one of the ways that we kind of approach a FSBO, giving them plenty of value, even showing them how to do it, giving them tips and everything else. It builds a tremendous amount of rapport, but they always come to the conclusion in their own mind that, even though I know how to do this, I'm not sure I necessarily want to do this now. Most for sale by owner sellers will eventually list with an agent. I would say it's roughly about 90% or so. Some do actually sell it on their own. So how do you approach or build rapport with a for sale by owner? Because that's what it's actually all about, is relationship building over a series of a few weeks, predictable weeks. And each week there's a certain goal you need to accomplish to list with them. So when you initially contact a for sale by owner, you may encounter some hostility the way you might with an expired, even though they come from two different places, right? Now, the seller will have an automatic defense response, just automatic defense response, because they're getting called by so many agents saying the same thing with the same simple script, or telling them they have buyers, or all these other things. And it's simply irritating the for sale by owner seller because they want a buyer, not an agent, right? So it's in the way that you approach them that's going to make the difference, make you stand out, and actually you'll be able to cut through all of the noise that that seller is experiencing. So they're getting inundated with calls from agents. And how do most agents approach for sale by owners, right? We've all studied these scripts. They're all the basic scripts that I learned on initially, whether it's the Mike Ferry scripts or it's basically All of the for sale by owner scripts I've seen in the last 13 years have been some derivative of that, maybe some minor variation. They follow the same basic structure, promise the same thing, and when you have 20 agents calling for sale by owner saying the same thing, that seller eventually gets the drift that, oh, okay, these guys are all full of crap. So most agents also approach these for sale by owners with commission breath. You've seen those agents yourselves. You've probably bought and sold a house yourself as well. You know what commission breath smells like, and it smells like it's all about the agent and not the seller. It's all about making a buck, and they can sense that from a mile away. So also, a lot of times, especially the way some of these scripts are designed that I've seen, agents can come across with a little bit of arrogance because they're dealing with a seller attempting to do what that agent is an expert in. And sometimes the agent there might even be a little insecurity in there because the seller is actually moving in on real estate agent territory, and they may come across as a little bit arrogant sometimes or hostile themselves towards the seller as if the seller is stupid. And they can sense that as well. Also, a lot of times these agents, when they call, they make it all about the agent, not about the seller. You want to always come from contribution when you're working with a for sale by owner. Always make it about them, always come from contribution. Same thing, we talked about they're all using the same type of scripts, but also they talk about themselves. You've seen these agents that in these scripts, oh, here's how great I am. Are you familiar with the techniques that I use? Are you this or that? About me, I'm the best in the world. These other agents, they think they're competing with other agents when they're really competing against themselves and their relationship they're creating with that for sale by owner. It has nothing to do with any other agent. I don't know how many of you have ever heard of Gary Vee's book, Jab, 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 Right Hook. That's exactly how we want to approach it. We want to give them some more value, give them some more value on top of that, and then we're gonna ask for the appointment. We're gonna ask to list their home. Once we've built some rapport, once we've given them some free value, remember what I told you earlier, a mechanic can teach you how to change your transmission. You're not gonna wanna do it once you see what all is involved, right? It's exactly how we're just gonna contribute, give them value, free. And then they're going to trust you. You're going to have so much rapport with them. And not only that, when you do teach a little bit to a FSBO, they start seeing you as an expert as well. And you do want to be branded in their mind as an expert that was willing to give for free. A lot of agents have a problem with that too. I hear a lot of them, I don't work for free. I'm not doing that for free. You have to change your mindset when it comes to these for sale by owners with that. Remember, jab, 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 right hook. Also, when you teach them a little bit, you're not telling them how great you are, you're showing them how great you are. Also, be interested in them to be interesting to them. People like those that are interested in them, right? We like people that like us. Now, I don't mean be friendly and talk about some kind of other random non-real estate thing to build rapport. It means be interested in their property, be interested in the number of bedrooms and baths, the square footage, the extra features, the other things. Be interested in what their needs are, what they're trying to accomplish, where they're trying to go. Be genuinely interested with the type of responses and active listening that communicate interest, and they will be interested. Initially, you're going to go from that reactionary defense response into a normal flowing conversation. You'll get over that RDR very quickly. And once you get into a regular conversation, take your time and be interested. They will tell you everything that you need to know. And in fact, our script, for the most part, that you're going to learn in Module 2 is a series of questions. Of course, those questions do lead them to rapport and expertise with you. However, it's mostly through a series of questions rather than telling. You've all heard telling isn't selling. And advanced selling is never telling them things. They will draw their own conclusion based on the questions that you ask. For sale by owners have a definite timeline and rhythm that's been consistent over the years. And it's week one. Here's what this phone call sounds like. Here's the value I provided. Here's the thing that I gave them that gives me a reason to follow up in a couple days to make sure they got it, see how they're doing with it, or resend it again if I have to, and go for a soft close for that appointment. But your main goal in week one is building rapport. Now, most for sale by owners have a very definite and predictable timeline and rhythm. That is held up over the years. Most FSBOs list with an agent on average within 4 weeks. It's usually half of the time frame that they tell you. So let's say you're going to ask the question, oh, if the home doesn't sell, how long are you going to wait to list with an agent? And a lot of time, let's say they tell you 8 weeks, they're going to list in 4 weeks. If they say 4 weeks, it's going to be 2 weeks. You need to definitely be back in touch with them and ready to go with them with rapport already having been built and a relationship established by that time. That's half of what they told you. But on average, within 4 weeks, almost all of them list with an agent. Some go a little bit longer than that, but not many. So just count on that rhythm and that timeline. FSBOs tend to list with the last agent to call them once they decide to give up on selling it themselves. It's like a switch that gets flipped in their head. And the moment it's flipped into selling with an agent, you've got to be there and you've got to be ready. You have to have already built some rapport with them and trust. And that's why I say help them out with that first phone call, because then you're going to have that rapport and trust, but they have to know that it's genuine and it's not just about you, right? You have to stand out. You must be able to follow up and be there when they decide to list with an agent. Once that switch is flipped, you never know when it's going to be in that process. You just know it's going to happen. So you have to be there right away. You don't want these other agents calling and they decided 4 days before they're going to sell it and someone else was slick and moved in and used some of these techniques to get in there and build rapport and trust with these agents. You want to make sure that it's you. So your follow-up game has to be very strong and very consistent. Follow up with a purpose. I can't stand it when there's agents or people that I'm training that they say, yeah, I follow up. Well, what'd you ask them when you followed up? Did you have any reason to follow up? Did you follow up with a purpose, or did you just call to check in? When you just call to check in, you can get away with that 1 or 2 times with any follow-ups for any real estate calls, whether it's buyer, seller, FSBO, expired, it doesn't matter. If you just call to check in, you are wasting their time. After a couple times of just checking in, they're going to stop taking your phone calls, right? So you have to follow up with a purpose. You have to have a reason to call them that adds some sort of value to what they're trying to accomplish. Ask what they need help with. Give them free advice, like I said, and I know a lot of agents don't like to hear that. Give them free advice. Remember, teach them how to build the transmission, and they're not going to want to do it. They're going to want you to do it instead. They just want to know you're an expert once they decide, I don't want to build that transmission, right? So give them free advice. Ask them if they got the video that you sent them, the one that teaches them exactly how to do it on their own, how to set up their showings and how to qualify buyers, how to do all the stuff that eventually they're not going to want to do. Ask them if they got it. And if they didn't, chances are they didn't watch it. Good, send it to them again. It gives you a second bite at the apple to provide all kinds of value to them. Ask how many showings they've had the previous week. When you check in week 2, hey, how many showings did you have last week? I'm just curious, but say it in an encouraging way as if you're training them, almost like teaching a new agent. I always approach them as if, hey, yeah, you seem to be pretty talented in this. Have you ever thought about doing real estate? I say that to them sometimes too, and almost every time I ask them, they get excited and they're like, well, kinda. Next thing you know, rapport, trust. They are starting to realize at this point too, this isn't as fun as it looked doing it on my own. I may need an expert. But in that initial call, just build rapport, stand out, offer the video to help them out, offer them pre-help, encourage them, give them the soft close. You've just built all that rapport. You're still going to try to close for an appointment, and you got to let them know what you do. And I tell them in my script also, yes, the reason that I'm helping you try and sell it on your own is because I think that there's a chance that you might be able to. But if for some reason you do decide to list with an agent, I would like to be that agent. Does that make sense? Yeah, okay, that makes sense. And it's fair enough. And it's not some BS approach. You're being honest about it. They know why. They understand, but you're helping them. And then they're going to accept it and trust you. In week number 2, you're going to call them up, again, follow up about the video, see if they got it. You're going to ask them how things are going. Ask them again, how many showings have you had? Give them a little more advice based on your expertise. Don't give them everything, but give them a little advice that may help them out based on the feedback you're getting. Ask if they're keeping track of the buyers who called. Ask them if they've got a logbook or something like that. Hey, are you keeping track of all the buyers that are calling you, their names and info to follow up? You can even ask them, would you like me to help follow up with those buyers for you? Because guess what? If buyers that don't have agents are calling these for sale by owners, those are clients for you, right? And you're providing a service for these for sale by owners. And that's a potential lead source of buyers for you. And they see it as a tremendous amount of value. That one, you've got to be careful the way you approach it. You've got to be smooth with it, but that can be a tremendous amount of value if you say, hey, if you've been keeping track, I'll call and follow up on those for you. I'll do it for free. And then close for the appointment. Week number 2, you're going to close a little bit harder for that appointment. It's not just going to be the soft close, which still a close. You always have to close on every one of these calls all the time. But week 2, you're going to go for more of a direct close for a listing appointment. Week 3, you're going to check in the same way that you did with week 2, using the exact same value add features, curiosity, and other things. Now, week 3, you're going to want to bring them some market stats too. Go ahead and bring them some market stats. Talk to them in that conversation a little bit more about their motivation. You want to bring them back to their motivation always. Okay, were you moving for a job, family, where were you headed? Were you staying local or leaving the area? All of that kind of stuff, but bring them back to the motivation. And then you're going to give a little bit harder close in week 3 because now we're 3 weeks in. You're going to teach them with the market stats and how the best marketing once you hit the MLS is in the 3 weeks, and then it dwindles off. And then you're going to start teaching them as if it was a real estate agent, but you have to be very careful not to be arrogant about that. But then close a little bit harder. Week 4, you definitely have to be closing for the appointment. You have to make it make logical sense for them. But by week 4, you have to be closing because somebody is going to close them in week 4. It needs to be you. You've already done all the work. You've put in all the effort. You've built the rapport. You've built the trust if you approach this the right way. You've added value. You've taught them a little bit, so you've proven your expertise. And hopefully they like and trust you at the end of that because that's who people like to do business with. Also, a few extras here that you're going to need for as we go through these modules and what you're going to learn and what I'm going to provide to you in the last module, all of the resources that I use. You're also going to have good autoresponders set up. You're going to have the auto text, auto emails set up to go along with your calls. We call it the 10 days of pain for our buyers and sellers. Every new client that comes in through a source that's not necessarily our sphere goes through the 10 days of pain. And that means they're 10 days of phone calls to establish who we are and how we're going to help them. There's the phone calls, there's the emails, there's the text message autoresponders, all adding value and making sure they understand we're there to serve them. In fact, that's one of the things I usually say in my opening pitch in all of my scripts is I just want to know how I can serve you at the highest level. Approach it that way with service, how you can serve them. But also the autoresponders are also going to communicate that as well so that the average agent that is going to call a FSBO, which is only maybe 2% of agents out there, even the average one of those will probably call once and that's it, no follow-up, no nothing. You have to come out of that first 2 weeks as kind of the last person standing that they remember, you're top of their mind share, and it's very important. So autoresponders. And the autoresponders are always going to direct them back to the video that we provided with some value, or I also have a listing website that we created for our own team members that actually shows exactly what we do for our listings. It's basically a listing presentation. It doesn't they don't know that that's what it is, but it is, because I use it in my listing presentations, but it articulates all of the value that we provide, all of the marketing we do and everything in a website. So my autoresponders are directing them back to that video as a free bonus that they're getting through that listing website. And basically the listing website is running them through an automated listing presentation, and they don't even know it. I hope all of this information in Module 1 has been helpful. It was just an overview of for sale by owners, how to think about them, how we're going to approach them, and now all of the tools that you're going to need to do that is going to be coming up in the next couple of modules. So remember, module number 2, we're going to go over scripts. Module number 3, we're actually going to watch live calls of me out in the wild calling for sale by owners so we can hear exactly what they say, what I say, how I deliver the script, the tonality. We're going to go over the successes so you can see how a successful appointment sounds and what the rhythm and tone. Usually successful appointments always have a certain trajectory that they go in, right? Successful calls. And we're also going to analyze my busts or my mistakes. I make mistakes too, and we're going to analyze some of those and actually see what could I have done that I didn't do. It's one of the keys that I go over with my team members when they join the team and we start training and everything, is I immediately start teaching them how to self-identify where they went wrong with certain things so they can self-correct rather than me saying something or somebody else. Because if you can start self-identifying and correcting your own mistakes, then you're going to actually learn and accelerate at a much faster pace. And remember, there are no mistakes, there's just learning. And FSBOs are one of the most rewarding. If you can get into this lead source and master it, it will change your life. It definitely will change your business. Again, I'm Tim Brooks. I'm so excited that you were on this training with me. I cannot wait to see you in Module 2, where we're going to break down the script in detail, and it'll let you know exactly what I say and how I say it, and hopefully that'll help you know what to say, when to say it, and why to say it. See you soon.